Fantano rated Rest in Bass. They said a solid 7, something like that. I seen on Twitter. It's a 7, but I don't know what type of 7 he gave. But a 7 for Rest in Bass is insane. I'm super curious what he... Light 7? I'm super curious what the hell he had to say. Because I thought he was going to rip this. But let's see.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, 7:30 a.m.'s fire.
The internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Che album, Rest in Bass. Here we have a new LP from Georgia native rapper Che. This is his second album, the follow-up to last year's Say So Says. And Che's style, sound, makeup is purely a product of the internet age. I mean, the first steps of his career came through some tracks going viral on TikTok, and he operates within a genre that is just so terminally online in terms of its context and origins. Of course, I'm talking about Rage, this hyper synthy, loud,
rated a
aggressive,
4?
distorted brand of track popularized by artists like Trippie Redd and Playboy Carti, as well as Lil Uzi Vert, to name just a few. And while I haven't necessarily been the biggest fan of this musical movement broadly, one thing I can give it is that it's gotten massively popular, mostly on its own terms, meaning that its mainstream exposure hasn't necessarily led to its flagship artists scrambling to change up their style and sound to basically go for a larger commercial appeal, something more pop-centric. Again, just a change we haven't seen, even as artists like Playboy Carti and Yeat have landed features and collaboration spots with the likes of Kendrick Lamar and Drake. And most artists in this wave seem more than content to just do their own thing and feed either off of each other or their own nihilism as a source of inspiration. And this has resulted in a network of names that has more or less redefined what underground music is for a new generation of rap fans. Now, up until this point, I've covered a bunch of artists who have operated in this genre or have been adjacent to it in some way. And while I do think there's a lot of merit to the vibe and ethos many of these dudes bring to the table, most of their full, entire albums will often leave me wanting more due to an overall lack of vision as well as follow-through. Whether you're talking about the bloated track lists that have plagued Playboy Carti's recent projects, or the slovenly flows of a guy like Destroy Lonely, and also the unrelenting distortion.
Yo, he just has like a vendetta against Lone, bro.
Rot on the new Osama Sun record, for example. But with Che, I'm not going to tell you this guy is like a breath of fresh air or doing something radically different from many of his Rage contemporaries.
Ice Cream Man
and
uniform?
If Rage is not your thing at all, I wouldn't really be surprised if you just wrote this off like any other album in the genre. Certainly this record is not going to be for everyone. And I digress even further, but I think Che himself would even acknowledge how much of a profound influence a guy like Playboy Carti has on his music. But even though in many ways Rest in Bass is a pretty predictable record for this style, I still found myself enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. Mostly because I think Che delivers on a lot of the inferences that Rage music makes out of the gate that weirdly many of its most significant artists just don't. He fulfills the promise of this sound, this style being aggressive, being visceral, and bringing an actual rock star spirit that transcends genre. Which again,
but he didn't like Whole Lotta Red. What?
Sense I don't often get when
you rate Whole Lotta Red a 5.
Whose performances on records such as this come across disengaged or low effort or apathetic. And certainly I can
see what he's saying there. You could see like Che was fully dove, right? But he didn't like a lot of red. You could see Che fully dove in and embraced like the Rage sound. He didn't really just let the beat carry. He really like went in and gave us like that, rock star, punk type of voice. Like you could feel the energy he was giving off with his in his voice. But like Carti did it first. That was the blueprint. He did it like what?
Exhibiting and reacting to when it comes to the world they were born out of. But I don't think that should extend.
Is this rated better than Yeezus?
For the music itself. Call me corny, but I do think the tracks these artists create should feel engaging and locked in, even if they're not trying to scratch the deepest of mental itches. If you're going into this Che record, though, looking for bars and emotional intelligence and depth, though, you will be sorely disappointed. It's a lot of flexing. It's a lot of materialism. It's a lot of lean getting poured up on this record for sure. So yeah, what you see is what you get with Che for the most part. But I think he makes up for that lack of layers with an abundance of energy and enthusiasm. Take the intro track, Slam Punk, for example. A start to the record that is just bursting at the seams with thunderous 808s, repetitive wailing synths, shouty ad-libs, and lead vocals that are so wild that making the auto-tune on them glitch out. The whole track sounds like a massive mosh pit, with some lyrical shout-outs to Little B of all people, which it's great that Che is actually in touch, seemingly, with the weird online rap lineage he's a part of, that many of the artists in this style just seem blissfully unaware of. But yeah, the first track on this thing, it goes hard as hell, as many opening tracks on these records do, but Che actually manages to keep the momentum up going deeper into the record. Whether we are talking about the sloshy bass, synths, and sputtering hi-hats on Rolling Stone, where the lead vocals are just punchy with compression, and the track On Fleek following this is somehow even freakier than the past two tracks. The bass is even more booming and aggressive. Che's lead vocals just have these cartoonish cracks in his inflections, which are somehow made even zanier with the auto-tune. There are deeper cuts to be had where, yes, the aggression and the distortion continues, but the synthesizers laced into the production or Che's lead vocals bring maybe more of a melodic appeal or an anthemic chorus, whether you're talking about lip filler, which seemingly does showcase a bit of a pop sensibility for Che. There's also MDMA, which features a chord progression that feels lifted straight out of a big festival EDM set. Dior Leopard synths and production make me feel like I'm listening to the deep fried remains of an old school NES video game soundtrack. And believe it or not, as far as like chord progressions that are a little sweet on the ears and have a melodic appeal, the closing track bass lifts a sample straight out of a goddamn Beach House song, and yet in the context of this very aggressive, very explosive brand of rap, it somehow works. Just the juxtaposition of that beauty but also that harshness. Then there are other standout moments on this project.
I agree with what a lot of what Fantano's saying. Obviously, I think Cardi did the whole lot of red thing with the punk and the energy boom boom boom. He did it first, but other than that,
so much
I kind of agree with what
harmonious or a melodic appeal. Maybe more instead a straightforward banger beat with a lot of groove. The kind of vibes that make you want to crash your car through a storefront, get out, and begin crowd killing right there in the broken glass. I'm talking Hood Famous, which features a fantastic beat switch in the midst of the track. One of several very good beat switches on the album, actually. Also Mannequin, whose beat is actually a pretty unlikely for
I wonder if you're going to speak on the Xavier feature.
Manages to make it work anyway with a pretty solid feature from Xavier So Based.
What? He rocked with it? I didn't rock with the feature. I'm not gonna lie.
Surprise moments on the record as well, where we do get a bit of variety due to the features, namely Chucky, whose relaxed rap style, sans autotune entirely, is an interesting switch up.
I didn't like his feature. I'm not gonna lie.
Album. A very strong contrast to Che's freaky, boyish, guttural inflections. Toward the back end of the record, we continue to get some switch ups, but it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of whether or not they actually work. Eardrummer shoots for something much more chill than anything else here, but just ends up underwhelming as a result. Meanwhile, Doe Deer is one of the most extreme cuts on this entire record. This punky noise rock, rage, trap fusion that features production that feels
my favorite's Marceline.
Just distorted, blown out arcade Space Invader synths. And the track Bass, which is the closing track that I mentioned earlier, is that Beach House sampling cut that actually ends things off on a relatively strong note. So yeah, I ended up enjoying way more tracks than I thought I would going into this. But still, with that being said, I do feel like this record suffers from at least some of the same issues that many Rage LPs do, with the overall lack of sonic and aesthetic variety, the lack of song structure sometimes, or memorable moments that get just lost in the haze of screams and just very explosive moments. And for as creative and locked in as Che seems to be for a bulk of this album, there are some cuts here that just feel too alike in style and sound to many of his contemporaries, and even Che himself manages to slip in a spare song or two that feels like he's just completely winging it and is not really on tempo. Still, I found Rest in Bass to be one of the more solid and engaging records I think I've ever heard in this style, which is why I'm feeling a strong 6 to a light 7.
Strong 6, light 7?
Transition. Have you given this record a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate?
Okay. I'm honestly not mad at Fantano's rating. I'm really not mad at it. I think he kind of spoke facts, to be honest. I think he should. That was unexpected when I first saw it. Yeah, that was a really good for Fantano. Yeah, I was not expecting him to like it whatsoever. I thought he was going to come into it and be like, yo, this is just Playboi Carti, just, I guess, more diluted, or somebody who's trying to be like Carti. But the way Fantano spoke on it, I agree with. I mean, you could tell, like, Che, came into the record, obviously with that whole punk rock star type thing. He did it, obviously, with the whole voice and the beats and boom, 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 which is obviously rooted from Carti himself, which is why I was like, why did he not rate Whole Lotta Red higher? But it makes sense, obviously, 5 years later. I would like to see Fantano re-rate Whole Lotta Red 5 years later, especially after hearing albums like this and, albums like Osama Sun's Jump Out. But I agree with Fantano, what he spoke on with this whole rating. I'm not going to lie, Fantano's been hitting for me as of recent. He's been checking all the boxes. He's been doing pretty well, in my opinion, with a lot of his recent reviews. Shout out Fantano.